Awesome. If you just joined us, go ahead and grab this QR code on your phone. Or can you throw the link in there for my team? Can you guys throw the QR code link into the chat for us? And we will
I'll get that in there.
take a look. Thank you, Alayna. All
I'm
right.
gonna, it'll be in the mix of all the questions in here, but hopefully you all can.
Yes, a lot of my senior care friends. Hey, got some other groups too, nonprofits and higher education, other healthcare groups. That is awesome. Awesome. So, welcome, welcome. Okay, so Jess, you want to go ahead and get things started? I'm going to leave this QR code up for just another minute or two. Let folks grab that while you kick us off.
That sounds great. Thanks, Cara. So today we are going to talk all about what is going on with the workforce. This is the official end of the year 2024 state of the workforce, and we're going to be focusing in on embracing a new leadership approach. We're so glad you guys have joined us. My name is Jess Ray. I work with the Magnet Culture team with these fabulous ladies here on the call. And my goal is really to talk with clients every day. But I think my favorite thing as I reflect over the year is all the amazing relationships that have been forged this year. I love when people reach out to me and say, "Hey, Jess, do you have a form about this? Do you have a template? Do you have a video?" Yes. So please use your free resource, Jess Ray. Love to chat with you guys and connect as well. So I am joined today by Cara Silletto, President and Chief Retention Officer at Magnet Culture, and Alayna Thomas, a workforce and Gen Z strategist here at Magnet Culture. Today, in our discussion on the state of the workforce, we're talking all about the evolving workplace and the shifting expectations around leadership and engagement that's driven by the entrance, the rolling out of the red carpet, if you will, of Gen Z into the workforce. So, in today's webinar, we've got a couple of key goals here. First, we need to kind of dive into why. We got to know the why of why you should understand and embrace the needs of today's workforce, how to develop modern leaders, and also to how to prioritize leading development initiatives. Remember that all of our webinars are recorded and they're available on our website, which will be dropped into the chat. Check out this year's past webinars and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can be notified when these pop up. Today's will play back within just a few days on that same page if you'd like to share that with your team. And free training alert. It's the end of the year. You're giving some free holiday lunches, perhaps. Put that sucker up on your TV and listen as a group. And that really does hold well. It's just a free training opportunity, right? As questions come in today, put those in the Q&A box. We'll try to get to as many of those as possible. And be sure to stay for the entire session because we have really a great deal that we want to offer to you as we approach and continue to plan for 2025. So enjoy today's conversation between the dynamic duo of Cara and Alayna.
Hey.
Thanks, Jess.
Awesome.
Cara, I want to dive right in. I'm going to start by asking you a question. What is the top trend that you think leaders need to know about the evolving workforce?
Okay, so here we go. Here we go. The biggest thing that we have realized, many of you read Staying Power, our book that came out many years ago, and it really talked about the workforce being these two different buckets of the trees and the revolving door. The trees are those deep-rooted, very dedicated folks. They are not a flight risk like the newer hires that are in this revolving door that keeps spinning. Well, this year, if you have not heard us speak or had us out to train your leaders, you might still not have heard the latest, which is that now it is the deep-rooted trees, and the new analogy is houseplants. So there we go, right behind Alayna there. We want to talk more about these houseplants that are new hires coming in, and it's not just young people, but our new hires coming in are a one size no longer fits all bunch. There are orchids, very shall I use the term high maintenance, needing a lot of attention. Okay. I don't mean that in any negative way at all, but we have employees who absolutely need daily check-ins and making sure that they are well cared for. They have the attention, the water, the sunshine that they need. Okay. And then at the other very extreme end would be a cactus that you can water just a little bit, walk away for a month and come back and they're just fine. They're doing just fine. In fact, they were glad you were gone. Okay. They love that autonomy and whatnot. So I even had an employee the other day say, am I being an orchid right now? Like it was like a synonym, I guess, for high maintenance of did she think she was bothering me too much? I said, oh, no way, no way. But most of our employees, of course, fall somewhere in that spectrum, somewhere in the middle, maybe a Boston fern or a spider plant or something that needs attention, pretty regularly, once a week at least, checking in, see how they're doing. But that to me is kind of the epiphany that we've had this year is this new analogy of those deep rooted trees that are more stability driven and seek an organization and roles and situations where they have that stability that's their top priority versus the house plants that are more mobility driven. If I don't get the care and attention that I need or want, I am going to move on and I want to be able to go to another planter. In fact, in one organization, you can even repot or replant that plant into a new planter or new pot and help them grow right where they are within the organization. Do not be fooled. House plants are not short term. I know
Mhm.
people who have had house plants for decades. In fact, one of our clients, when I gave this analogy a couple of months ago, they told me that their office has a house plant that they have successfully cared for more than 20 years, which is fantastic. And I think our new hires that come in, if we treat them more with that individualized attention, they can absolutely become that long-term house plant that, we move within the organization, we help them grow, we give them the water and attention they need, but they do stay, longer term for that. So that to me has been kind of one of the biggest trends this year and kind of things that's leading all of our conversations around this workforce because one size no longer fits all. And even though some of you on this call today, many of you are in leadership positions and you do have direct reports, but even if you don't, or even if you're having this conversation with team members who maybe aren't in an official leadership role, everyone has influence.
Mhm.
Everyone can help care for those house plants and kind of work together to make sure that our new hires are getting what they need. So we have to acknowledge also that influence. What we say here at Magnet Culture is everyone's a magnet, and you are either attracting or repelling the talent on your team every single day. So that to me is our biggest kind of overarching theme. But let me flip that question over to you. So, what do you think is important for leaders to understand specifically about Gen Z? So, we didn't do an official intro here, but Alayna is Gen Z on our team. She's in her 20s. She's brilliant, as you already know, but she does represent a different lens than my elder millennial lens when I'm coming into the work world here. So yeah, Alayna, what do you think then specifically about Gen Z, maybe?
Yeah. The phrase we've been using is Gen Z brings their whole self to work. And I have to
Wholesale.
say, when I first heard it, I was like, no, we don't. And then I said, oh yeah, we do. It's easy to go to that place of that's a negative, but actually I really want people to understand that this is neutral, if not positive. It's just shifting the way that we're working right now. So what does that
Mhm.
mean? I mean, most of you probably know what it means. You're like, oh yeah, Gen Z brings their whole self. But I didn't know that it wasn't common to talk about my entire personal life at work. Like you asked me what I did this weekend. I'm going to tell you about my pets. I'm going to tell you about what food I made, what movie I watched. I'm going to tell you about my situationship that's happening. I don't have one, but some of your employees might. I might tell you about my recent friend breakup. Like any of this ringing a bell for
Or a
anyone?
doctor's appointment, test
Oh,
results.
yes. Oh, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And then, of course, that's more the lighthearted side, but on to switch the tone, the more serious side, I'm bringing my conversations to work about how I'm doing from a mental health perspective.
Hmm.
And employees are bringing that conversation that's never been had in the workplace
Yep.
here. Some of you might say that you started seeing this really a couple years ago. But my question is, are you equipped? Even though this might have started happening a couple years ago, we are behind on equipping our leaders to actually have the conversation to both support the new staff. Let me switch out to support the younger staff who's having a mental health challenge, as well as helping them get the job done. That is one of the greatest challenges that our leaders are saying. And Cara, actually, you had just done a retreat and you heard this great quote, and I can't remember it. Can you remind me?
Yeah, so one of the leaders in a healthcare organization, she said, we are taught as healthcare professionals how to deal with heart attacks, but we are not taught as leaders how to deal with panic
Mm,
attacks
that's
on our
right.
team. And this was when we were talking about, are our leaders equipped with the comfort level, the competence of what do I say, what should I say, what shouldn't I say, and that confidence of I am going to help this person. I feel equipped to step in. I'm not a therapist, but I can absolutely kind of help that person as well. And so I thought that was really, really empowering. And let me clarify too. So I had specifically asked Alayna about Gen Z, but I think a lot of what is happening with Gen Z bringing their whole self to work is also a societal shift that we're seeing trickle up into the other folks. So, you all, I just had a friend recently who is 48 years old. She is Gen X. She had been put thing after thing after thing on her plate, right? Overload, overload, overload. She is a great employee, wants to do the right thing. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. I'll take it. I'll figure it out. I'll do it. And then she started having heart palpitations and some problems with her heart. And she went to the doctor, and her doctor immediately was like, you need to take time off. You need either FMLA or a break or something, because your body cannot handle this stress. And so when she went back to her boss and talked to her, then her boss, of course, is like, I'll take things off your plate. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Don't leave. And I'll tell you, the end of the story was that person ended up leaving the company even just a month or so later, because it was like too little too late, right? When we keep saying that. So now I'm seeing even my millennial Gen X boomer friends start to have these mental health conversations and the physical health conversations with their leaders, because it's serious, and it can also cause turnover too if we don't take it seriously, and our leaders aren't equipped to have those conversations. Like, that's not my problem, right?
Yeah.
Because it is our problem as companies.
And we're actually we care so much about this. We see this as such a big need that we are building a class for next year, which I'm really excited about, called Leading the Whole Person: How to Coach with Care, because that's the key. It's the balancing of both. Of course, as a Gen Z employee, I would love for you to just care about me. Like, let's not care about the needs of the business. Let's just talk about all of my stuff.
Yeah.
But obviously, we need to balance both. And we know what's happening is if we're going too far to the extreme of the organizational need, then we're
Hmm.
losing people. And we're actually finding that that's less generational than you think it is. Attracting and retaining the new workforce. You'll hear us say the new workforce a lot.
Hmm.
That's not just Gen Z. That's your new hire, right? You're
Yeah.
hiring people of all ages. And every new hire is a flight risk. So if we don't meet the needs of our new hires, we're going to lose them before we even have a chance to introduce them to what we're doing here. We might think, oh, we've got great incentives and great things if you just hit 6 months or a year. Well, new hires aren't staying that long if we're repelling them so
Right.
quickly. What else would you add to that, Kara?
Yeah, absolutely. And a great question came in, from Fran saying, well, can people who are not birth year Gen Z have a Gen Z mindset?
Yes.
Yes, and that's kind of what I was alluding to, is the mindset of separate personal from professional, that mindset is shifting across our society and shifting across our workforce, where people are saying, yeah, I think I do want to talk to my boss about my struggle at home. And I'll tell you, just a few weeks ago, I was in a funk. I was mentally like, I kind of explained it as I just keep waking up on the wrong side of the bed.
Hmm.
But I'm waking up on the same side I've always woken up on, and I've always been an optimist, and I just couldn't shake it. And when I actually talked to a couple of folks on my team about it and said, I don't know, I just have this kind of nagging feeling and looming doom, or something was just really getting to me. And once I talked to my team and they gave me some perspective and reminded me of things to be grateful for, and they kind of helped me and supported me, and within a few days I was like, okay, yes, I got this. And they helped kind of rescript my mindset and where I could be during my work hours, to be more productive, because I could feel myself slipping out of that pure productivity mode and things like that. So yes, it's absolutely kind of trickling up. I don't think it's going to go away. Um, I think we're going to see more and more in-depth relationships that the
Mhm.
workforce is looking for now. We even talk about this term work friends. A lot of younger folks in particular, if you run into a colleague at the grocery store, they're not going to say to their family, this is my colleague, my coworker, right? They're going to go, this is my work friend.
Yep.
And they really want to be work friends, which is a little bit different dynamic than colleagues and coworkers and boss employee type of things as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of that going on. And as far as equipping leaders for that, we have a new retention framework that's coming out in 2025. And part of that is really making sure that leaders are prepared to provide more guidance and support to their workforce. Those are the two big buckets that we will be focusing a lot of our training programs around, a lot of our keynotes around, is how do we better understand the new workforce, not just Gen Z, but how everything is changing. We have a lot of retirees coming back part-time, and that's part of the new workforce, because I'll tell you, they come back with a different mindset at part-time than they did being full-time. That's for sure. So we want to make sure that leaders understand how to better guide folks through better onboarding. We even call our onboarding now the on ramp. So when you think about somebody getting on a highway, coming around that curve, that you're not familiar with that highway and that entrance ramp, we've all been there, and you get around the corner and go, this on ramp is way too short, and you're forced into full blown, full speed or more traffic going next to you, probably honking at you at this point. And that's
And you have a choice.
terrifying. What's
You
that?
so you have a choice. Either you're like, okay, great, I'm gonna speed up and I'm gonna get on there, or you're gonna say, I'm taking that next exit.
Yes, get me
And
out of here. Get me out of
yes,
here.
and I'll say earlier in my career, I was more prone to take that first exit because I didn't know that I could successfully do it. And so you might have
Mhm.
people, you're like, why are they taking the first exit? I got up to speed. Like,
Yeah.
what they should be able to get up to speed too. It's those
Mhm.
different mindsets, though,
Right.
right? If I'm
Well,
saying,
and Alayna, remind me again, who's hiring?
hmm, um, everyone.
Right?
Especially for the lower wage, the hourly frontline lower wage worker. I mean,
Yes.
you can go find a job anywhere.
Yeah.
And it is, some people will say, okay, well, I know not everyone's hiring because I'm looking for a senior HR position. Okay, well,
Mhm.
that's at a different price point, different competitive level than everyone
Yes.
right now at that lower wage.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So, particularly for our frontline workforce, we have got to make sure that that on ramp, that guidance that we're giving folks is much better. And let me tell you this, that is not just HR's job. Sometimes HR feels like, well, we did our orientation and checked all the boxes. And then when we hand them to leadership, that falls flat, because that's where the person feels like they're not getting any guidance or any support to keep learning. And instead, so many of the clients I talk to and work with, they say, well, we're just short staffed. We got to get them on the floor. We don't have time for them to shadow. We don't have time to give them a 2 week runway or whatnot. But then that's the same person that says, but then nobody stays. So we're finding that when we actually put the right time up front to make that on ramp more effective for folks, we have less folks taking that next exit and they stay on. In fact, I think I've got several friends on here today who are what we call ORs. They are onboarding and retention specialists. So shout out to my ORs on the call today that are actually in a full-time position at their organization focus specifically on the onboarding and retention strategies for that organization. So we've been teaching for years that companies should have a full-time retention specialist in place. And we've got a big project going on up in Minnesota right now where a bunch of ORs positions have been created across those buildings. And it's really, really showing its proof in the pudding, I guess. It's showing results that having a person to really focus on that can make a huge, huge difference. So
Mhm.
yeah, your thoughts, Elena?
Yeah. If I can give a shout out to the new hire here, not just the young hire, the new hire,
Mm-hmm.
leaders, your new hire cannot read your mind.
What?
We don't know the way it's always been done here because we're new here.
Yeah.
Even if you hired me with a lot of great experience from the last company, yeah, I'm bringing my experience, but we don't know that I did things the same there, here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I joined the magnet team, I asked a lot of questions. I'm a big question asking new hire, but there are also silent, quiet, over in the back corner new hires that aren't asking the questions. And just
Yes.
because someone in the room doesn't have that question doesn't mean that they get it. We got to slow down for a sec and make sure we have that on ramp that we need because new hires can't read your mind. And
Right.
actually, Cara and I and other people on the team have this conversation. We even throw this out, right? I'm like, Cara, I can't read your mind right now. She's like, oh, yes, that's right. Because it's so easy to assume, right? If
Yes.
someone's nodding along, yep, that they got it. But I'm just processing in here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it really is, it's important to know a balance of both things. I don't want to push leaders too much to now start saying, well, here's how we do it here. Because if you do that, you're missing what we just talked about at the beginning, which
Yeah.
is that the way we've always done it has been more of a one size fits all approach. It's worked for a tree heavy population,
Mm-hmm.
but now we have a houseplant heavy population that needs different things. And this doesn't mean that you have to do a different thing for every single person. Someone in one of my classes used the phrase, we can water two plants with one hose. I loved that. It's this idea that if we can just rethink a few things, we actually can benefit and serve more of our current population rather than, unfortunately, that declining tree population.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so really think of when you think about the new hires can't read your mind, it's really easy when someone like me asks the question that you're like, that is a silly question. Maybe you use a stronger word than silly, but that is a
No.
silly question. Just remember that I am waiting on you to communicate what you need from me.
Mm-hmm.
I need you to communicate your expectations so that I can meet them because I can't meet expectations that I don't know about. And if you later get mad at me and say, Alayna, you didn't meet that expectation, if I'm more of a fragile house plant, I might just crumble under that pressure and I
Yes.
might struggle to keep thriving down the road.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh. So we've got a couple questions. One question came in and said, "What is a retention specialist?"
Mm.
Like, what do they do all day? In our hidden secret vault of information, you can go to magnetvault.com and there is a sample job description of what a retention specialist position actually looks like. So definitely check that out at magnetvault.com. And then we have another question here about how can we equip supervisors and managers to take on the mental health needs and concerns of their team, but without overwhelming or diminishing that leader's own health, mental health, especially, right? As in so many of our organizations we work with, the managers are already kind of overloaded. So, Alayna, I'm putting you on the spot here, but
Yeah,
did anything come to mind for you from our kind of coaching with care conversations we've been
yeah.
having as we're building out that class?
I think one of the biggest things is where it can feel overwhelming is when these conversations are coming at you from every direction at any time. Like you might as a leader be in the middle of something important and an employee has a what they believe is a crisis and you've got to approach that and handle that. So one thing that you can do is you'll hear us talk about this a lot is genuinely check in with your employees. And what you can do in that moment is you provide the space for them to say how they're really doing in a
Hmm.
time that actually is more manageable for you as a leader. So
Right.
don't tell them. Okay, don't tell them, I'm checking in with you now so that you don't talk to me about this later. Obviously, do not do that. But when,
Rude.
yeah, when I know when I'm going to have access to my leader, I can go a little bit longer and kind of manage some things on my own and then get that support at more of a predictable cadence and knowing that when I'm actually talking to Cara, when she says, "Hey, how are you?" She's not saying, "I don't have my phone by me, but how are you?" and like scrolling on her phone or walking away. We're in more of a virtual setting. She's
See that.
saying, "Hey, I've got 15 minutes. How are you? What can I help you with? How can I better support you right now?"
Mhm.
What else would you add, Kara?
Yeah. No, I was just gonna go straight to that, that if you actually plan the time to meet with your folks, one-on-one more regularly, then it won't just pop up as often. I mean, sometimes there's a mental health crisis, but if somebody like me, when I was just kind of off that week, it wasn't just a one-time incident type of thing. It kind of grew over time. And if I had time to talk with specific people throughout that week, then I wouldn't have burdened anyone else with like an emergency. I need to talk to you right now. So yeah, I think it's really, really important that we check in with people genuinely. And I know everybody says, right, I just don't have time, Kara. I'm doing everything else. But part of the reason why we do not have time is because of the churn of turnover that we
Mm,
are seeing. And so when I see organizations and leaders build in the time to check in with their folks and better guide and better support up front, they're the ones who don't have as much turnover and are not fighting as many fires and trying to fill as many last minute shifts because they have this more well-oiled machine and even well-oiled relationships that are in place for that right now. And we definitely see. So I'm gonna speak to the executives here for a moment because we definitely see that there has been tremendous scope creep
yeah.
in managers' job descriptions. Even though a manager or director, when I say manager, I just mean people who lead others, right? So a manager or director position, even though they have had the same job description for years, if they have one bullet point that says, welcome the new hires or, properly onboard new hires. And years ago, that job description bullet point only took 5 or 10% of their time. And now they're like, oh, I've got a new hire every week on my team. So now that one bullet point has swollen or ballooned into a gigantic issue that they have to now spend 15%, 20, 30% of their time, especially those ones around hiring. If somebody is a hiring manager, the hiring bullet points have swollen, the onboarding bullet points have swollen, even just managing, leading, communicating with their team. Those needs have become greater and take up more time. So, for the executives on the call, if we're looking at a more sustainable organization in the future, I'm now leading these CEO forum conversations and days of training where we're really looking at the org chart. Does that org chart still work? Like, where did our assistant managers go? We used to have a director of nursing and an assistant director of nursing, and I haven't seen near as many of those in these recent years. And I think that is then causing some of the turnover because that director does not have time to lead the whole team all by themselves when they also have their other job to do and scheduling and hiring and things like that. So that's another kind of state of the workforce. If I were to talk specifically about the managers, is they are now, and a lot of you could probably raise your hand. I won't make you, but you could probably raise your hand and say, that's me. I'm in a management position that just continues to be bombarded with more. And I haven't had the chance to to remove anything off of my plate. And we need to make sure that we're not saying, let's do more with less next year. Let's do more with less. Oh, I saw that eye roll, Alayna.
Yeah.
Let's do more with less. Let's do
Sorry,
more with
couldn't
less.
hide it.
Yeah, we can't hide the eye rolls anymore.
Ugh,
Absolutely. And so um, I'm a business owner, you all. I do understand. I have my MBA. I can crunch the numbers. I understand productivity and profitability and all of these things. But what I'm seeing is we've almost gotten to an unsustainable point where the business model, people say, well, I can't bring back assistant managers. We don't have the money for that. But then when I calculate the turnover as hundreds of thousands of dollars that they are losing because of the churn, if we spent those dollars on the positions that really have time to care for their staff and check in and train and guide and support and all of those, that would make a huge difference on those other dollars that are just walking out the door. So
yeah,
it's, some actionable opportunities we're seeing now are recalibrating some of these roles and positions, recalibrating that on ramp for the new hires, adding that retention specialist role for focused and a focused driver of those initiatives as well. And I'm seeing these specific tactics actually make a difference when the organizations are willing to go back and shake it up and say what we're doing, even though it worked maybe for decades. I mean, some of my clients are 50 to 100-year-old organizations, and it worked for decades, if not nearly a century. But what we know now is most organizational um, approaches that we have held on to from the late 1900s are now a quarter of a century later not as effective with today's new workforce. And
yeah,
what is attractive, right? Kind of think about what is attractive in an organization and what is the new workforce, even those retirees who are coming back, or maybe folks who stayed at home in their 30s or 40s to raise kids and now they're coming back, or people who want to go full time, want to go part time, all these new hires coming in at different ages and with different priorities and different mindsets. What does that look like
yeah.
for us as an organization?
I think what you're talking about connects with Karina asked an awesome question in the chat. I'd actually love to just read all of it for those who can't
Yeah,
see
please.
it. And I'd love your thoughts on this. I've got some thoughts too, but I'd love yours too,
Okay.
Kara. What advice or suggestion can you provide after leadership has made significant changes to job pay scales? They've lowered pay scales for some staff while increasing it for others, citing pay equity in the local area. This change has left many of us feeling undervalued and demotivated, especially those who were maxed out and can no longer reach the original maximum pay agreed, but then can tell us to continue to take on new tasks.
Oh,
Ugh,
yay.
yeah.
First of all, let me have a chat with them and we send them a copy of my book, just like sneak it into their office. I don't know. Because I think we are seeing a lot of executives that are out of touch with what makes an organization attractive today. Some senior leaders who've been around a long time, there's lots of great ones who have kept up and are evolving with the workforce, but I also see a lot of them that they still see that relationship as you come to work, you do a job, we give you a paycheck, and that's the relationship. That's where it ends. And that is not the relationship that the new workforce is looking for. They absolutely want it to be much deeper than that. So as far as pay, we focus more on the culture side, the leadership side, and certainly we want every organization to use as many dollars they can to pay people absolutely what they are worth and what is livable and what they can raise a family on and things like that. But we're not so much compensation experts. And so what we help organizations do is try to figure out how do we make this a place where the person wants to come back tomorrow, and that they're kind of stuck and magnetized to the organization and the leader. In fact, my staff, I mean, I will be perfectly honest, and I've said this face to face with every single one of them. You could go make more money somewhere else. I cannot compete with big corporate groups, Fortune 500 companies, as far as what I pay, but I work my tail off to listen to my people and make sure that they have the flexibility they want and the voice they want and the benefits they want and other things that I can give them, the opportunities for advancement, mentoring and access to information and things like that. So we have to kind of balance the people side and the culture side with the pay and compensation side for that as well. I hate hearing that they lowered some of the pay scales. I actually haven't heard that in the last few years because most organizations are bumping up their pay, not just because of compensation analysis in their area, but because of inflation and really needing to get the wages up with other cost of living that has risen. So yeah, I hate hearing that. But I do see most organizations I talk to, they're trying to put as many dollars as they can toward their wages and salaries. So yeah,
Mm.
Alayna, what other thoughts and perspectives do
Yeah, I think you said this at the beginning, right? Employees today are no longer just coming and saying, thank you for the paycheck. You know,
you? Yes.
no. Okay, great. Paycheck, that's the bare minimum. What else? What else are
Hmm.
you providing?
Hmm.
And the reason why they can ask that, they've got the power to ask that because everyone's hiring
Right.
and because this information is readily available out there. I mean, I'll tell you before every job I've ever applied for, I am looking at Glassdoor. I am also looking at Reddit. If you guys are not familiar with how powerful of a tool Reddit is, it's just an open forum where people can say, "Hey, what do you make in this job? What should I ask for?" And
Yeah.
we know not all that information out there is coming from people who loved the job, right? We have some people out there who are saying, this company sucks. They didn't pay me enough. But they're not talking about all the other things that you provided. So you're between a rock and a hard place, right? The pay is not what you want it to be.
Right.
And if you're already struggling with turnover, people are overworked. That's what I saw in that comment. What I'd encourage leaders when you're in that position, you're not the decision maker who got to influence the pay. What do you
Mhm.
do then? Figure out what matters to your employees and try to align what they're doing and the benefits that your company offers with that. So, Cara knows that what matters to us on the team really heavily is our quality of life. So, what Cara
Mhm.
has done, and she knows that's different for each person based on the needs that we have. So, she's able to provide some flexibility that to me is honestly better than making a little bit more money somewhere else because I would rather have that quality of life. Um, and then also we don't have enough time to fully get into this, but we've been unpacking in our classes this balance of perceived sacrifice. What
Mhm.
employees are willing to sacrifice today does not align with what employees were willing to sacrifice previously. So if
Absolutely.
you might have, and this is frustrating, if you're a leader on the call who is like, I am the one that when someone else says they can't do it, it goes on my plate, and your
Hmm.
plate's like this big, right?
Right.
I can imagine how frustrating that is when someone else says, nope, I'm done for the day. I'm not taking on anymore. Got to
Yeah.
protect my mental health. And I say that lightly, but know that a lot of times that is kind of how it's said. It's like, nope, I'm not doing that. Um,
Yeah.
what do you do in that situation? I think just go back to communicating what you value about that person and the value that you really believe their work is bringing to them.
Right.
It's an extra step. I get it, but it is key to keeping your people.
Yeah. And I'm going to go a little different direction here with something that just came to mind too, is when you talked about sacrifice,
Mhm.
most of my Gen X and Boomer friends who are still working, they were raised in a time of obligation.
Mm,
They were taught you respect your elders. Why? Because we said so. They were taught you respect authority. Why? Because we said so. That you do what is supposed to be done, and you're almost chastised if you don't follow the rules, and how dare you, and who do you think you are, and all of that type of thing. And I'm seeing, as far as the evolution of the workforce, we are seeing less and less sense of traditional obligation in the workforce. Does this make sense? Like, people do not feel obligated to give you a 2 week notice. And do you know why? Because your organization wouldn't give them a 2 week notice if they're going to let them go. So the workforce is saying, you wouldn't do it for me. Why do I have to give it to you? That's very one-sided. And right or wrong, I'm not saying that I agree or disagree with that, but that's just one area of obligation. You know, I have had some conversations recently with folks, is more on a personal note of, um, do young people feel obligated to go to a funeral of a friend or family member who has lost someone? Maybe I didn't know the person who passed away, but I'm close to the person who lost a loved one. And I've been talking to my friends, like, do you go to a funeral for someone who lost a parent or grandparent or friend? And so many people are saying, no, I didn't know that person. No, they do not feel a sense of obligation there, where my mother taught me, and I'm very millennial, like not traditional in very many ways at all. I'm super not traditional. You should have seen my wedding. It was like the anti every tradition that's ever ever been told that was supposed to be at a wedding. But my mom always taught me, you go to a funeral for the people who are grieving, the ones who are alive, and to show your support and condolences, and to be there and show that love. And so I just use that as an example. As a very recent conversation I had with several folks, unfortunately, this past week. And I'm seeing it with my generational lens, that it is yet another example of this decline of obligation, whether it's a personal obligation or a professional obligation, that the workforce doesn't see that. So let me pull that back around from a business standpoint and say, if you are a leader, with a mindset that was raised and taught to have that sense of obligation and respect for authority, and you do what you're told, I I absolutely think that now is the time for everyone's physical and mental health, that we start to have a new conversation with our leadership about the lack of sustainability that exists in our current state. And we have to say it in a new way. We have to be still bottom line focused. You can't just go to your boss and be like, I can't do this anymore, right? That is not going to get what we need. But instead, saying, here is what has happened to my job description. Here is what has happened to my workload, and being very specific about the ballooning, the scope creep, and saying, I am unable to support my new staff in the way that I need to when you have put management of others on my plate. I am not able to guide and support them properly because of da 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 da. What can we do about it so that I don't keep losing my people because I don't have time to be the great leader that I know I need to be? So how do we find this new middle ground? And I know there's not magical dollars to pay for it, but I also know that this turnover is costing us a lot of money. So what do we do about that? I think it is very much time to have these conversations in a new way, and very focused on the new workforce. That's the game changer, y'all. Okay, is we can't keep doing things the way we've always done it, because the new workforce does not feel obligated to overload their plate like the previous generations did. And they do not feel obligated to even give you 2 weeks notice, or to let you know they're not coming in for that holiday when they have absolutely no plans on working that holiday that they are scheduled. They are not going to do
Can
it.
I add another?
Yes.
And we're not obligated to do work outside of work. When I bring my whole self to work, when I'm done with work, I'm bringing my whole self away as well.
Yes. Like the hokey pokey, right? Bring your whole self in, you take
There we
your
go.
whole self out. There she goes. So yes. I love kind of talking through this, and I hope you can see my wheels turning, you guys, because we plan questions and parts of this conversation, but I'm also always listening and learning and thinking about the bigger picture and how to get results and how do we have this conversation in a new way? Because I hear managers say all the time, I'm so busy, I'm overloaded, I'm exhausted, I'm burning the candle at both ends. And saying those things is not getting us the change that we need.
Mm,
So
mhm,
now's the time, figure out a way to connect this workload crisis that we're having now at the management level back to it's because the workforce has evolved and we've had scope creep of our job descriptions. And so as organizations, we need to seriously look at what does our org chart look like? Because you all, the goals here, the goals moving forward are we want to have greater management effectiveness in order to reduce turnover. That's one of the goals we're trying to reach. We're also trying to improve this staffing stability so that no matter what company you are in, okay, I saw a lot of healthcare folks. If that's the case, we have to improve staffing stability to provide consistent, high quality care for our patients, our residents. If you're in manufacturing, hospitality, construction, any of the other industries that we serve as well, you have to have that staffing stability to provide great quality products, quality services. It's really important to have that staffing stability so folks know how to do their job and we're not making mistakes and having to do rework and things like that. And then you got to put your executive hat on and say, okay, that how do we balance leadership, right? The people side leadership and the operational capacity that is needed to still pay our bills and bring in enough work, and have a sustainable organization moving forward. So I think it's really important that we keep those big picture goals in mind of what we're trying to accomplish and that we talk from whether you're an executive who needs to talk more with the front line and make sure you stay connected to them, or you are middle management pulled in all different directions and we need to make sure that we're bridging the gap and not having that widening disconnect that we see
mm.
year after year. So yeah.
Yes. Thanks for adding that reminder about bringing it back to the bottom line because you're right, it's not working. Like, and that's so hard when it feels like I'm asking for this and my leader, I'm losing trust in them because they're not responding to me.
Yes.
Our supervisors, our leaders, we want them to be, but they cannot be everything to everyone. So if we can think like them, we can be more persuasive in that and really get what we need. I just love
Right.
that.
Right. Yes. So, okay, I'm going to pop this QR code back up for you all. If you did not already take this little gap analysis, I think this is a really great tool that will allow you to see where you might need to take some leadership development to your executive team or to your, decision makers and say, look, we are not equipped to handle this
Mhm.
changing workforce, whether it's a generational standpoint or the that mental health support standpoint or the onboarding. Like, hey, I'm a manager. I don't really know how to do onboarding the way that I should as well. Or maybe the other managers are not owning that. So if you take this quick gap analysis of the leadership development for your organization, then it'll email you your results and you can kind of take that tool and that list over to your leadership and say, here's where I have found some gaps, and I think it's really important that we take a look at these, either in 2025 or whenever our next budget cycle comes around, or those types of things. And really excited because we've got some new stuff coming up. Alayna, what all are you working on? I know
Yes.
we're
Oh, so
collaborating on a lot of stuff right now,
so many fun things.
2025.
Well, I also have some big like big brother over here. I can see we've gotten 14 responses so far. We've received 14 responses, and the number one area that you all are saying strongly disagree is our leaders solve problems independently and equip others to do the same. So that tells me
Oh,
that we are on track because we're building a class to help leaders be independent problem solvers, but also to equip your teams too. This connects back to actually a webinar, Cara, that you did about the decline in critical thinking in the workplace. So on
Yes.
top of not having enough time, like, no, I don't have time to answer your question about that employee. I need you to be able to do the job that I hired you to do.
Hmm.
Sounds like we have a gap there as well. And we're working on so many great things. I think the retention framework's probably one of my favorites. We're going to talk about that in the next webinar, but we are taking a holistic view from the perspective of staff, of the leader, and of the executive. What are
Yeah.
the things that are key to attracting and retaining the workforce that has evolved today?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm super excited about this framework, you guys. We are like inches away from finalizing it, and we will be launching that at our January 17th webinar as well. So, Jess, you want to?